Well, what I'm going to talk about today is leadership and how leadership is not supposed to feel heavy. If you're in a position and responsibility increases, leadership should feel clearer, not heavier. And if leadership now feels dense, slower, or more effort than it used to, man, that it's typically not because you're failing. It's because something changed and no one explained what that change would do to your leadership style, to you as a leader. So here's a little story. Early in my leadership, man, it felt really sharp. It felt great to be at an elevated position. I mean, I saw decisions moving and momentum in our group was building. We were producing results. And what I saw was as scope expanded, the leadership changed. And my role, it became less about solving and more about designing how problems move. But when you look at most leaders keep operating as solvers. So instead of designing flow, they become part of the flow. I experienced that. I was carrying more decisions and I was absorbing more of the ambiguity and I became more of the place where complexity was landing. My leadership didn't collapse, it thickened, right? And that thickness, that feels like the weight that I described earlier, that heaviness. And it's this invisible shift that no one tells leaders about. That leadership weight is a design failure, not a workload issue. Workload increases naturally with leadership, but the leadership architecture should evolve with it. It should evolve to carry it. And when the architecture doesn't evolve, leaders, I mean, I experience this, leaders become the structure. And when leaders become the structure, leadership becomes heavy. So I've got three insights related to when leadership becomes heavy, something to think about, right? And secret number one is weight is a signal of authority collapse. When authority is well distributed, leadership feels light, right? Everything feels good, it moves, it's effective. Not easy, but clean. And when authority collapses inward, man, leadership becomes dense. That's that heavy feeling you feel. Decisions begin to stack, and escalations seem to multiply because the clarity has compressed toward the leader. That weight it increases not because of responsibility increase, but because authority stopped flowing outward. Right? That's not leadership getting harder. That's leadership architecture failing under speed. Secret number two, heavy leadership is reactive leadership. So reactive leadership always feels more dense or heavier, right? Not emotionally, but structurally, because the reaction absorbs chaos instead of shaping direction. And leaders become the shock absorbers for ambiguity. They're needed everywhere, they're involved in everything, consulted constantly. And that's not because the organization is broken, but because the system routes uncertainty to the safest place, and that's the leader, right? That's you. If you've entered that operator mode where you're solving everything, and safety is not authority, it's dependency. Secret number three: weight increases before public failure appears. Right? Leadership weight increases long before performance declines. Results can remain strong. I mean, the KPIs, they stay in code green, right? Level green. And from the outside, leadership looks effective. But internally, leadership begins to feel exhausting. And this is why leaders misread the signals. They think the weight is the cost of success, but it's not. It's the cost of running leadership at scale. The system was never designed to carry, right? That you get it to a certain point, but you haven't adapted your structure, man, that's when failure occurs. Okay, so the consequence is this: over time, heavy leadership produces predictable outcomes. The strategic altitude drops, right? And your decision quality, it slows. And your presence, it fragments, right? I mean, yeah, you just can't be everywhere, even though the team is demanding it. And leaders become necessary everywhere, but influential nowhere. And not because they lost authority, but because authority collapsed inward. Leadership becomes maintenance instead of direction. And that erosion, it begins to feel personal, even though it's structural. If leadership feels heavy, don't try to fix it through fixing motivation, and don't optimize productivity. Diagnose your structure. Figure that out first, because it's usually it's the structure. Your leadership model, your leadership structure didn't keep up with the pace of business. The authority architecture diagnostic exists. That's a tool we developed to identify where leadership weight is being created by design failure, not by leadership weakness. Because leadership isn't meant to be heavy, it's meant to be directional. And as always, share this video with somebody who can benefit, and subscribe. It helps the channel out. And until next time, stay strong. Take care.